So you have to learn music for gigs and shows and events all the time. But when you're learning it, should you be learning it as is, like note for note, or is it okay for you to put your own spin on it? Well, I think the answer may shock you. Hey, and welcome to Music Space, where we help working musicians just like you learn how to quickly and easily make a living with your craft. So if you're new here to the channel, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you'll be notified when new videos are uploaded. So it's no secret that we musicians have to learn music all the time. It's not uncommon for us to get set lists from new bands with, 20, 30, 40, 50 new songs on it at a time that we have to learn. And there are times where we only know, like a select few, like 4, 5, 6 songs out of that big, huge set list. And it's a last minute gig that we have to, play on Friday night. Like they're sending us this set list on a Wednesday. And, that following Friday, we have to play this gig of this large set list. And the thing is, you may have a job, or you may have school, or you may have, kids and a family that you have to take care of, and you don't have a lot of time to practice and rehearse this music before Friday night. Or it may be just the case that the gig isn't paying enough for you to put all of this time and energy into learning all of these songs. And let's be honest, this is an attitude that we've all had at one point in time or another about a gig. Or it could be a normal situation where you get this huge set list of songs well in advance, 3 to 4 months in advance, and you have to learn these songs. But the question is, when you actually sit down to learn and practice this music, should you learn it like literally as it is, or is it cool to add your own flavor and sort of improvise with it a little bit? So I'll answer this question, and afterwards I'll tell you a simple rule of thumb that I always follow to make sure that I'm always ready for the gig and the situation, no matter what the gig or situation is. So be sure you stick around for that. So the honest answer to this question is a little complicated, and the answer is it depends. And there's really only one, surefire way to know whether or not you should be, learning the music literal or putting your own spin on it. And that's just to ask the question of the people who hired you. But it otherwise depends on quite a few factors. And mainly it depends on the type of band that it is that you're playing for or you're playing with. Each band is going to have its own personality, and bands are pretty much all across the spectrum on this idea of learning music literally or improvising. Some bands are all the way on one end of that spectrum where, learning music note for note is a must. And in order to play with them, you better be able to play this music note for note. And other bands, are a little bit more relaxed where they maybe prefer you play it note for note, but it's okay if you, add your own flavor and improvise on it a little bit. And other bands are, on the other end of that spectrum where it's just, just be as relaxed as you want. Just show up and play however you feel it. Some bands even have this thing where they don't even have a set list. It's just, show up and we'll all play the songs that we know. So there are bands from one extreme to another on this idea, and pretty much everything in between. So the best advice is to be versatile enough where you can move across this spectrum seamlessly. If your band is a note for note band, then learn the music note for note. If you're playing with another band or you gig with multiple bands, be prepared to do whatever the nature of that band is as it concerns learning music note for note or, by ear or, improvising. And the nature of some of these bands change over time. They may start out as a note for note band and then, eventually sort of evolve into this, more relaxed setting where it's okay to kind of improvise a little bit. Or they may evolve from the other extreme. They may come from, a completely relaxed setting to where now we're going to play everything note for note. The important thing is that you be skilled enough to handle any situation that you decide to be in. And I'm emphasizing the word decide because it's something that's really important to remember. Unless you're in like a school situation or, some other situation that requires you to do one thing over the other, play note for note or, play a more relaxed feel, you're deciding to be a part of these bands that, have their own nature. And that's something really important to keep in mind. You're choosing these situations. And I know you may have your own personal preference. I mean, us musicians have our own personal preferences just as much as bands have their own nature as it concerns, note for note or, a more relaxed feel. And just the same, we musicians are all the way across the spectrum as well. A lot of us prefer to be on one side of it or the other. But when you're in a band, you are submitting your own personal preferences to the nature of that band. This is what it means to be a part of a unit or a part of a team. And again, this is something that's very crucial to keep in mind. I see a lot of bands who break up and fall out over this very sort of thing. You may have a person in the band where they have a particular preference and they're on one end of this spectrum as it concerns, note for note or not. And then you have a few other band members that's sort of closer to the other spectrum, and then they clash, and then there's this big fallout, and the band suffers for it. But if you keep this principle in mind that, submitting your personal preferences to the whole of the band, you'll be much better off for it. So how do I approach this issue? Do I learn songs note for note, or do I add my own flavor on them? Well, I promised you that I'd share a simple rule of thumb that I follow when it comes to this issue, and it's this. What I do is I Noprovise. And that's literally a word I just made up to describe this process that I'm talking about. So for me, it's sort of rare that I accept last minute gigs and situations that's going to put me in this thing to where I'm going to have to basically just brush over the music and sort of add my own style to it and sort of improvise, and take that approach to it. I rarely accept gigs that's going to make me do that. I just don't need or have to accept those types of gigs anymore. So the majority of the cases for me is where I'm accepting gigs where they've sent me a set list well ahead of time, or it's a band that I've worked with before and I'm familiar enough with their process to where they can send me a set list of what they do sort of closer to the gig to where I still have time to sit down and go through the music thoroughly and learn it and still show up and be ready for what it is they do. So specifically what I do is I tend to learn music note for note, probably around 90%. And this means I learn all of the little intricacies in the song that make the song special and that makes the song identifiable and things like that. And this is something that you just learn from playing so long and gigging for so many years. But I learn them and I keep them in my repertoire to be able to pull from when I need them. And here's a cool benefit of doing that. You know how you have things in your head to pull from when you're doing solos? Like you have your normal things that you can sort of pull from if you're doing riffs or runs on a guitar, bass, keyboard, drums, or whatever the case is. Well, these sort of intricacies become those same things in my head. So they become sort of like this repertoire of things I can pull from as solos in other songs. Like these little intricacies that are a part of, particular songs, I can use those intricacies as solos in other songs. So those things all kind of fit in that same box for me. Now, when I'm called on to do a solo, I have a lot of stuff to pull from. I can pull those things from my head, from my box. And this is the note for note part of the Noprovise word that I just made up. Now, the second part of that word, the provise of Noprovise, is I'm rarely put in situations where I even need to learn or have songs down note for note. With the exception of things where I'm sitting in and playing like with an orchestra where I have sheet music in front of me, and of course those things have to be played note for note. I'm rarely put in situations like normal situations where strict 100% note for note is a requirement. So the majority of the time I'm playing, I'm taking what I refer to as tasteful liberties to sort of add my own flavor and style in the music. So like not too far out of the box or out of the pocket, not too frequently, not too intensely, but just enough to show that I do have my own flavor and style, and just enough that during the night of the gig, I can turn a couple of the band members' heads and make them give me that sort of stank look, that. So look, all in all, do what's best for the situation that you're in. Do what's best for the nature of the band that you're playing with, as it concerns note for note or improvising. And if you have questions about that or you're in doubt about what to do, simply ask the people that hired you and you'll be in a much better situation for doing so. But the question is for you. What's your approach when learning music? Are you more of a note for note style person where you got to learn it note for note and you think that's the best way to do things? Or are you more of a relaxed person where you sort of improvise, like you learn the structure of the song and once you got it, you just put your own flavor on it? Jump down in the comment section and let me know. I definitely want to hear your thoughts on that. And listen, thank you so much for watching this video. I really do hope that it was helpful for you. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Go do that now and hit the like button on this video. And here are some other videos that you can check out right now.